First, want to say, just want to make sure that I acknowledge thoughts and prayers with everyone that lost loved ones during this challenging time, and certainly say thank you to all the first responders and essential workers and people that were working tirelessly around the clock, in the city of Buffalo, but also all over Western New York. It was obviously all my years of being around Buffalo and the Western New York area, I've never seen anything like it. So I'm sure we all have the same thoughts. So I just want to make sure we acknowledge that and appreciate the work that went on to allow us to be here today.
What were the conversations like with the league, Kevin, over the last 24 hours in terms of whether to play this game or not, and what was your reaction ultimately that you guys are going ahead and playing it despite some of the challenges involved?
Yeah, well, a lot of conversations. The league's been great to work with, constant communication with Bill Daly and Colin Campbell, and just, helping them kind of understand what was going on here. I had a lot of different conversations over the last couple days with local leaders in the city of Buffalo and the county, just trying to get a handle on exactly where we were, and also being respectful that there's much bigger things going on and bigger issues than are we going to play a hockey game. So what came of it was that if the travel ban was lifted and it seemed that it was safe enough to get into the city, then we should expect to be playing. So a couple days ago, my conversations with Donnie and Kyle Akposo and was that let's start to mentally prepare to play a game and be ready to go. So at the end of the day, that's all you can do, and knowing it was out of our hands a little bit too. We were going to be told, and whether we were playing or not, but also trying to be respectful to Detroit. They have to travel, the bus companies, and that's just in the last couple days. You go back to before the Tampa game, these conversations were starting with the league, and everybody knows what was being predicted, and so we were trying to also be respectful of the Christmas break, them getting out. And I certainly think the league made the right decision with Tampa, because as you guys know, when that hit, whatever the day of the week was, Thursday or Friday, if we were all in this building, I'm not sure any of us would have been, out of here for a few days. So it turned out to be definitely the right decision.
Do you have any players who are missing? Like, is everybody back today?
Yep, everyone's back. It was a little challenging for many of our players that live downtown. That lost power. They were able to get to hotels, and a lot of them here at the Harbor Center Marriott there. A lot of them had family in. So, challenging for sure, but I think it's perspective. That's what I think is important to keep in mind during this time. Warm had power. We're able to, be safe. A lot better than what many people were going through.
And I guess the thing I was asking more was, practice on the 22nd, knowing the game was off. Did guys leave thinking they were going to come back the 26th, 27th? Did anybody struggle to get back here? No one's missing everybody. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, so what happened there was when there was proactive postponement of the Tampa game, we wanted to make sure we had a good practice that morning, the Thursday morning, I think, if I remember the days right now. And my message to the players was, if you're going, try to go, out now and get out after practice that day. Some did. Some were able to get home, be with family. There was some travel logistics for a few of our guys, to say the least, but they were able to make it work. Then the challenge a little bit was we weren't sure how it was going to play out for the Columbus game, because we were still of the mindset that if in fact we were able to, even if it was a bus, to get out of Buffalo, there may be an expectation that we were playing in Columbus. So we were working with players to fly directly into Columbus. Casey Middlestad, I think, was the only one that actually ended up in Columbus, and then he had to get from Columbus to here. So little of the planes, trains, and automobiles, but made it work. And then, fortunately, from a preparation standpoint, to be prepared to play an NHL game, you think about the safety of players and all of that. We were able to have ice here for the players that could walk here. And fortunately, there are a lot of those guys that live close enough to walk. And then we were able to get ice in the north towns for those guys that once the travel bans got lifted in towns to able to drive there. So Donnie and I having a lot of conversations about what do the guys need and just to be ready to play tonight. So I feel comfortable that we've been able to get the guys on the ice enough, and not together. This will be the first one together in a while, but to be ready to play.
Kevin, you're from here. Have you ever seen anything like that, number one? And number two, not only do you have to worry about the Buffalo Sabres, you also have a family. You got to worry about Power, the rest of that. What has this all been like for you? And has this been the worst you've ever seen?
Yeah, by far, Paul, the worst I've ever seen personally. I mean, I live in Clarence, and it seems to me that if you live in Hamburg or Orchard Park, a lot of these you get the brunt of these storms. I mean, we got hammered, and just my own personal perspective on it was very fortunate that we never lost power. We had a house full of food and we were warm, but just watching what people were going through in the news, and your heart goes out to them. And my mother-in-law lives in about a half mile from me by herself, and I wanted to check on her Christmas Eve and took a walk, wrapped up and got out there, and it was 2 hours there and back, in the snow. I've never seen anything like it. So just breaks your heart for people that ended up, whether it was in cars and stranded or in really bad spots. And that's where perspective comes into play. We get up every day and do this for a living, and you need to make sure you always remember how lucky we are, and that what the first responders and essential workers, people were doing to even try to allow us to be here today is pretty remarkable.
Do you have any idea what your team's going to play like? I mean, how much of a mystery game is this?
It's a really interesting question, Mike, because and I remember it as a player, it used to be where we had Christmas Eve, Christmas Day off. The game on the 26th, you always played on the 26th. It felt like you were like the first period, oh man, legs were burning a little. And now you have an extra day, which we then had an extra day on top of that. That was if we were playing in Columbus. So you're going, okay, now I think every player feels that a little bit of after, there's a fine line of enough time off versus a little too much time. And that's obviously we had quite a bit of time here. So I think our players, I know that our players are excited to be together, excited to play tonight, do what they love to do. But, we have to be smart a little bit. You come out, you have to manage your shifts a little bit early, just make sure that you're not trying to overdo it or extend too much, because it does take a little bit of time just to get back into the game mode.
Is there any update on Owen and Eric?
Yeah, so we'll know from Jacob and Owen specifically. The rest has been really good for them, obviously, but we'll know more after the morning skate here. But hopefully they'll be ready to go, and then we're getting closer on Comrie, and just gonna kind of what his position is the challenge, right, with the injury he had, but he's doing much better as well.
How about with Comrie? We spoke with him before we left, and he said whatever you think is best for the team, he'll do. If you want him to go to a stint in Rochester as a conditioning, he'll do it. Are you thinking maybe that might be the best thing for him?
Well, I want to talk to Eric today a little bit just about the most important thing for me as I talk to him is to help him understand that we want to set him up for success. And, it's a challenge at any position, but especially the goaltending position when you've been out and you can replicate in practice and you can do movements, but then there's just that little extra intensity that happens in a game, a 2-on-1 where you really have to push and extend. Just want to make sure see where he's at with that. So I've been with him the last couple of days out in the North Towns and watched him and had conversations, but we're going to talk a little bit more today, and it'll be communication both ways. See what he feels he needs. I'll talk to him about what I think makes the most sense, and then we'll go from there.
What was the operation like around the arena to get the building ready to play? What was it like communicating with the people who were down
Yeah.
the streets?
I got to give, you know what, you've probably heard me talk about this a little bit before, but I want to make sure I give a lot of credit to the people that people don't see on the ice or understand what they do every day. Start with our operations team and what Stan Mikowski and his group do. It just goes unnoticed, but incredible. I mean, they work around the clock. They're out there in the middle of the night, and that's like normal for them. And then you add a blizzard like this, to be able to just for me to drive in today and get down the cobblestone street there and park in our spots is so. Really appreciate the efforts. Then you go into like the ticketing and you know the amount of emails and calls they get because when games get postponed and how's it going to work, and our business side does so much work. That's why I really feel strongly there has to be connectivity between what we do every day in the hockey ops and what they do every day on the business side, because we're all part of a bigger team. And so I really am glad you asked, because it's been constant communication, and I'm certainly appreciative, and I know our coaches and players are as well for the work they do.
Did the arena have any issues at all with power or plumbing or anything that you're aware of?
No, not that I've been told, but I don't know if you guys watched. I caught a couple of the news spots, and they were filming from KeyBank, and I was like, hope the windows are all shut tight, because I mean that wind coming through off the lake, and you could see it. So, I have not been told that, but actually Stan does a really good job of not stressing me out. So there could have been things that I don't know about, but I know our ice crew. We had TSO in here too, if you remember, before the Tampa. So there was a whole changeover that had to happen to get our ice even, and that was right before the storm was hitting. So a lot of moving parts, but no, not that I know of.
Did you guys have people here on Friday, like getting during the changeover? Because I know that concert was Thursday.
That, yes, in the middle of the night, and that was for me a little what the league did a really good job of in my opinion, in the Tampa situation, because I think it's easy to look at weather forecasts and say, oh, okay, that's supposed to be a storm, but we'll be okay. And when I was starting to see what was going on in terms of the predictions, my nervousness, to be quite honest, was for Tampa to be able to be home for Christmas. And now when we look back on it, I think all of us, if we had been here Friday even at a morning skate, and then they ended up calling the game Friday afternoon, I think all of us would have been hanging out together, because I'm not sure any of it would have left, quite honestly. So there were people around here, but as far as I've been told, they were able to get the changeover and get the ice ready by Friday morning, and hopefully, I haven't been told anyone was stuck in the building.
Will you wait? You're going to have to wait till you see about Power and Bryson before you make any roster moves.
Yep, but that'll be, in a few minutes here, just to make sure. Want to make sure these guys are all good to go. Today's morning skate wouldn't be your typical morning skate. I think it'll be a little more up and down, a little more structure to it, just to make sure. But then we'll have a better idea in a half hour or so.
When are you expecting news on the Columbus game?
You know what, Duffer? I'd expect today probably to get a phone call. I think I haven't even talked about a makeup date, and just from my brief conversations with the league, Columbus, they were in Europe, so their schedule's condensed already. I believe weren't they the Nashville game that ended up getting rescheduled because of the flood? So now you have another, so I think they're trying to juggle that. And what I have learned, I may have said this to you guys before the break, it's never as easy as like one game. We'll just flip a game and go there. It affects other teams, and then now it's multiple. It's what happened to us with Tampa. That's why the Philly. So Steve Hatzapetros from the league does a phenomenal job, and obviously living through the COVID seasons and the amount of reschedules, they clearly are experts. But I'm glad I don't have that job. That's not an easy one. Thanks, guys.